Good afternoon, students. I'm your tutor for curriculum studies. My name is Gertrude Namando. My qualifications for your interest stakes is provided on the screen. My contact number is provided and my email account. I can only be contacted from 6 up to 7 o'clock. The purpose of this presentation, I'm going to take you through the guideline of economics. When we are doing economics, there is only one assignment, which is out of 20. And after doing your assignment, at the end of a certain semester, you are going to write your examination, which is also out of 120. And I would like to emphasize the importance of studying the entire module before you use these notes. So don't just rely on this for your examination. Study your whole module. And the examination and the assignment, it consists of theory, and then we have different levels of answering these questions. As I start with the presentation, in number 1, I would like to talk about contemporary issues of the school curriculum. So these are issues that are having an effect on the curriculum. And if we look at the past education and now, in the education sector, we are still experiencing these issues. Like in number 1 is unemployment of school leaver. In the past, it was fine. But nowadays, you students can also give a testimony. We have so many graduates, but they are unemployed. So those are issues that the curriculum is facing. We have teenage pregnancies. In the past, teenage pregnancies have been there. The ministry and the community try to come up with different ways to discourage teenage pregnancy, but at school level, we are still experiencing this. And COVID made it worse. If you just read the statistic on learners that have dropped out of school because of pregnancy, it's getting worse on an everyday basis. Ineffective school management, we are saying some of the managers are not effective in driving the organization, either on the teachers and then on the students. If a leader is ineffective, if a leader is not having management skills, the school is not going to perform. And then we are talking of lack of national auditing system and then a reward system. So in the past, we have cases where the management doesn't know how to handle money for schools, and then now in place as a government, they require every school to get an external auditor that is doing auditing to make sure, because remember nowadays we are talking of free education. So the government wants to ensure that the money is working in favor of the learners. And then we are also talking of there is no reward system. When it comes to teaching nowadays, there is no job satisfaction, because as teachers, the ministry is not doing enough to motivate teachers. That is why now and then, most of the experienced teachers, when they get a good offer outside, they leave the education sector and they are out of the system. So these are some of the issues that are affecting the school curriculum. Talking of scholars, there are certain scholars that have made certain contribution to school. One of the very important scholars when it comes to education, we are talking of Maria Montessori, 1870 to 1952. So that means that's when the person started, 1870 and then 1952. Okay, so that means they are no longer alive, but they are scholars. What they have researched about the education is still making sense. Like there are even schools in Namibia that are using Maria Montessori contribution to education. So it's mostly found at primary level, where they are looking at the phase of development. Some of the schools, when the learners start, they don't send them to the next grade until the learners are ready. So that readiness, what are they looking at? They are looking at sensory motor. Sensory motor have to do with the ability of playing and painting. Remember, I'm talking about pre-primary education. We are talking of motor skills. Motor skills, we can talk of beadworks, where you give the learners a thread, where you give them beads, and then you look at their ability to construct either a necklace or something out of that. And then we are moving on to cognitive skills. Cognitive skills, we are talking of the memory. When we are talking of the memory, we are talking of logic and problem solving. So now this is when you ask the learners to, you have different colors. When you taught learners, this is red, there are a lot of colors. And then you ask them, when you say this is red, can you pick an item which is red for me? If they know red and then they pick an item which is of red color, and then you know their memory, they are now moving from sensory to logic. Okay, we are talking of problem solving. Now they are no longer able to pick. You give them one apple plus another apple. Now you have 2 apples, and then you ask them, what is the answer? If they can tell you the answer is 2, and then they are now moving to problem solving. So now this Montessori, it's working with pre-primary, and then they believe if a learner cannot use these skills, they cannot move on. So that's why with them you find that sometimes the learners start grade 1 when they are 7 or when they are 8, because they believe that is now when they are ready to start school. And then we are talking of sustainable self-directed work. So you are looking at self-directed, we are saying you are looking at the learner. Is the learner dependent on the teacher, or can the learners work without a teacher? You give a homework and then you go outside or to attend on something. So learners who are self-directed, you'll find that they are done with their work. But learners who are not self-directed, as soon as that there is no one to guide them, then they do other things. And then we are talking of the participation of the school community. In the olden days, the parents were involved in the education as well as the community. But nowadays, as parents, we are more focused on our careers, and then we are forgetting our children. We just believe that when we are taking our children to good schools, we are paying expensive schools, and then as parents, we just have that mentality that if I take them to a good school, I don't need to be involved because the teachers must be teaching, the teachers must be doing everything. So that is now the lack of the emphasis of the parent community. But the parents who are serious with their learners, they take their children to good schools, and at the same time they are also involved in the work of their learners, and these learners tend to do better. Another scholar, we are talking of John Dewey. John Dewey, his focus was more on teaching methods. Okay? So he believes that the teaching method that is used by the teacher can either have a positive effect or the negative effect on the education. If the teachers are using various teaching methods, the learners can pass well. But if the learner is only restricted to traditional learning, writing on the board, he also believes that it's limiting the learner's ability to learn. Project, as teachers, when we give project is more of self-directed learning. Because you are giving a project, it's only questions, and then the learners must go and find answers, either by reading their notes, either by going on internet. So that is now self-directed learning. As a teacher, when you give project, the learners who are using self-directed method, they always do well. They always do effort to get marks on their project. But there are just certain learners who don't care. They just complete for the sake of completing. The other method he talked about is experiment. Experiment is mostly used in physical science, entrepreneurship. So this is where you take the learners outside the classroom. It's either you take them to a computer lab to go on Google and then they find out more information. It's either you take them to a science lab. It's either you take them to for excursion just to go and explore more about that topic. And then his emphasis is when teachers use different teaching methods, quality education is likely to take place. The dimension of wellness. We are saying as a teacher, when the learner is done with school, all the dimension of wellness must be developed. We are talking of social wellness, we are talking of physical wellness, emotional and occupational wellness. So social has to do with interaction. As a teacher, when the learner is done with school, the learner must be able to have interaction skills. The learner must respect other people. The learner must respect elders in the community. We are talking of respect. Even when they are working, they must be able to respect other workers in the work environment. Physical wellness, we are talking of fitness. We are talking of eating healthy. We are talking of safer sex. We are talking of avoiding drugs and alcohol. We are talking of medical checkup. So as a teacher, you are not only teaching your subject, but you are encouraging the wellness of the child in all these angles. So that when the child is grown, the child knows about safer sex. They were taught. The child knows about drugs, and then they must come in with the right decisions. We are talking of emotional wellness. So here we are talking of self-image, and then we are talking of controlling of emotion. These things must be taught at school. How can a learner deal with other learners? Because in class you have these ones that are teasing you, you have a teacher. Teachers are also different. We have a teacher who doesn't beat, we have one that is beating, we have one that is insulting. So as a learner, you must come in with controlling emotion. These three teachers, you must learn to control the emotion. And then occupational wellness, we are talking of job satisfaction. Like I said, when sometimes money is not the only motivator, you can be at a job which is paying you well, but if the job satisfaction is not there, you will not stay at that job. When we are talking of occupation, we are talking of recognition, contribution. The bosses must also learn to recognize their workers. And then we are also talking of professional development. Professional development as a teacher, like if you look at my career profile, I don't just have one qualification that I graduated with. I'm forever studying. In this case, I just want to do what? It's professional development. When you are studying, you get more skills of dealing with the learners. So that is what we are talking about by professional development. And then we are having factors that have a crucial influence on the implementation of the curriculum. Okay, I just listed them here. In your modules, you must go and read further. So what do we mean by talking about historical foundation? Historical foundation, remember this is, if we look at Namibia, for example, historical foundation when it comes to education, you look at the history of the education before we were colonized and after we were colonized. So if we look at the type of education before independence, the medium of instruction was Afrikaans. If we look at, there was still discrimination. The black community did not have access to resources. They did not have access to textbook. So this is now what we are talking about in the past. We were taught things that did not make sense to us. I remember when I was in primary, they were teaching us about general science, and you are learning about a life of a grasshopper. Now, come to think about that. If I learn about the life of a grasshopper, if I learn all the parts of the grasshopper, all the parts about the lizard, what are you going to do about that? So that is the type of education that they were giving to us when we were colonized, just so that as black people, we don't do what? We don't have the right knowledge, and if we don't have the right knowledge, we won't go anywhere. But then if you look after independence, the curriculum changed so that we get rid of the colonial education, and then now the medium of instruction was what? English. Remember, people were taught in Afrikaans. How will you pass if you are taught in Afrikaans? So they changed the language to English. They came up with 4 goals of education. We are talking of equity, we are talking of equality, so we are talking of democratic. So now there was equal distribution of resources among the white schools and the black schools. Now any parent who can afford to take their kids to any school, you can do so without, there was no longer a thing of this is only a white school, that is only a black school. So that is what we mean by talking about historical foundation. And after independence, our curriculum changed about 3 times. So they use this if it's not working out, and then they revise that. Now we are in the 3rd phase of curriculum change. So that is what we mean by saying historical. A philosophical foundation, it has to do with, there are so many theories. We are talking of social constructive, we are talking of behavioralism, we are talking of constructivism. So social, we are saying a learner work in a social unit, okay? A learner is working in a social unit. If we look at the curriculum nowadays, there is a learning that says, as a teacher, you must start with pre-knowledge. Pre-knowledge is what the learners know at home, and then you do what? You come back to what they don't know. So those days our textbook were based on the other countries, but now with a new curriculum, our textbooks are revised to indigenous knowledge. Okay? Behavioralism, we are learning about a certain behavior of learners. Learners can be conditioned. Like I said, you can have a class of slow learners that don't know anything. But the moment you start motivating their behavior, the ones that are passing, you are rewarding them. In the end, when you give your next test, all the learners are going to pass because they know when we pass, we are rewarded. So you are conditioning the learner's behavior. And the other one that I want to talk about is constructivism. Constructivism is saying learners are not empty vessels. They come with the knowledge, and as a teacher, you build on the knowledge. So that is, as a teacher, it's very important that you use these terms in your education. Like I said, go and read further. There are so many terms when it comes to philosophical foundation. Psychology has to do with motivation. Okay? Psychology has to do with motivation. That as a learner, don't just assume you have a learner in your class that is always coming late in the morning, and every day you are beating this learner. So with psychology, we are saying every teacher must be a counselor. Call the learner in, find out the reason why is this learner coming late every day. You'll be shocked that you have been beating this learner, but maybe, like for example in Windhoek, the learner is walking from Okahanja Park every day to a school that is in town, there is no taxi money. Or the learner is dropping the other children where, or the learner is taking care of a sick parent. So we are saying as a teacher, before you label a learner, find out the factors behind. That is what Psychology Foundation has to do with. And then the political foundation, as we are saying, politics is very important when it comes to education. Like nowadays, the Namibian government has decided on free education from primary to secondary. So that is a political influence. They are giving schools money. That is a political influence. The government is deciding the medium of instruction to be used in school must be English. That is political. We are talking of resources. The schools must have resources. So the political factor is having a huge influence on our curriculum. So those are the 4 foundations. And then now we are looking at the outcome of the senior secondary education in Namibia. So one of the outcomes is to develop democratic attitude and skills. So as a teacher, we are saying we must allow the learners in our classroom to have the freedom of speech. We must give them, let's not just teach. As a teacher, sometimes you ask the learners, what method of teaching do you want me to teach? How can I improve my teaching method? We are giving them freedom of speech. We are giving them equality. Like I said, in a classroom, we have a combination of rich and poor, fast and slow learners. You must love these learners equally. So that is what we mean by talking about equality. You must give them the same notes, no discrimination. You give them the same resources, no discrimination. If there is sport at school, everyone must be able to choose the sport that they want without any discrimination. Or we are coming in gender, white and black. All the people nowadays, what we are saying in Namibia, equality must apply. And we are talking of social justice also. To develop and install a sense in national identity starts with unity. We are starting with our national anthem. So we are saying at school it's very important that we instill this national identity, national pride in our learners. When backwards, we respected these things so much. But nowadays, it's about rights, it's about what? We are now in an era where people don't respect one another anymore. We are in an era of killing. So we are diverting from our national identity. We need to be able to prepare learners to obtain qualification. By qualification, we are talking of qualification that are recognized internationally. As we are saying, we are now living in a global world. International qualification means that the qualification that you get from IOL or other institution, if you want to go and work in South Africa, that qualification must be recognized there. And in Namibia, we are having NQA, that is a body that regulates qualification. Before you study for something, you go to NQA and ask, is this qualification recognized? And then we are talking of entrepreneurship. As I said, nowadays there is a lot of unemployment, so we must be able to equip our students with entrepreneurship skills. So that as a teacher, if I'm done with IOL and I don't have a job, you can start consulting where you are teaching people in your garage, you are teaching people at home. Through that, it's entrepreneurship, you are getting money. So that is what we are talking about when it comes to the outcome of education. And the next part that I want to touch is the social reconstruction. As the term social is saying, we look at the local and we look at the social problems and how we are dealing with them. So that's why I'm saying when the curriculum is revised now, we are more on social problems. Social problems, we are talking about teenage pregnancy. If teenagers are pregnant, how are we going to deal with it? Like, for example, those days, if a learner is pregnant, they were required to go home. But now the ministry make provision that if a learner is pregnant, the learner must just communicate with the life skills teacher. The learner must be able to come to school until such a time that they are about to give birth. When they give birth, they can stay at home for 1 or 2 months. If there is anyone that can take care of the baby, that learner can come back to school. These are social problems that we are dealing with, and then we find ways of working with them. And then our scientific method, we are saying we are no longer interested in research that is done by outside countries. In those countries, we are not at the same level. So we are interested in our own scientific knowledge. We are interested in our own scientific process. So that's why when we are having people of different careers, when we are having certain diseases in Namibia, we must be able to use our resources to come up with the right treatment for that. And then we are saying we must not just be dwelling on the history of what happened in the past. So we also have to look at our own circumstances. What happened? How are we going to deal with it? So that is what we mean by a social reconstruction. And then next I'm going to look at the role of stakeholders. Remember, there are so many stakeholders in education. It can be the role of, what is the role of a principal at school? What is the role of school board at school? What is the role of parents at school? And what is the role of DNEA? So DNEA, we are saying it's a body that is regulating the education sector. In Namibia, the DNEA, it's based in Okahanja. What does that body do? That body, when the curriculum is changing, they are the ones that are making research to come up with the right curriculum. They are the ones that are drafting the curriculum. Remember, a curriculum it's a guide towards all the education sectors. They are the ones that are coming up with educational policies. They are the ones that are coming up with circulars that goes to school. They are the ones that are coming up with the school syllabus and then the guide, okay? So that, like, remember our curriculum, our education system changed. Now we are into a new system. So when they come up with a syllabus as a guide, and then now they invite people to come up with textbooks, but the people who are writing the textbook, you are writing according to the syllabus which was created. So that is they are regulating what is to be taught. So this is now what we call NEED. And then we look at the competency-based education with the subject-based education. If we are talking of a subject, we are talking of knowledge that is based on a specific subject. Remember, we have different subjects. We are having accounting, for example. We are having economics, for example. We are having geography, for example. So when we are talking about subject-based, so now each subject is having a different knowledge. So that is what we mean by that. Competency-based, we are talking of the outcome of learning. When we are teaching learners in secondary, when we are teaching learners in primary, what outcome do you want from the whole process? Okay, so subject-based has to do with content-based. Okay, content-based, like I said, accounting, geography, you are looking at the content of every subject, which is different. While competency-based, there you are just preparing learners for work and life roles. So you are teaching them different subjects, but in a way you want to prepare them to work and then to life issues. And then the time-based qualification. So when it comes to subject, we are looking at qualification that is determined by hours. If you look at your IOL module, so you are having different courses and then there is a time frame. They are saying this qualification level must have maybe 240 hours, okay? And then when we are talking of standard-based, we are talking of qualification level that are determined by the set standard. And then the subject-based, the emphasis is on the input, okay? What are we teaching learners? And then the competency-based, we are looking at the output. Okay, output is what can, like I said, competency has to do with after school. What can the learner be able to do after school? Learner-centered curriculum. Learner-centered means a learner must be on top of his or her own education. A learner being at the center of his or her own education, so that means that we are in an era where the student can choose what they will learn, how they will learn, and how they are going to assess their own learning. So as a teacher, you are having a topic, okay? You can allocate different topics and then the students choose. Learners, you cannot force the learners that you are only going to learn using this way. They can use anything as long as learning is taking place. And then we are talking of peer assessment. Learners must be able to assess one another's work. We are talking of a learner being responsible for their own learning. Like I said, learner-centered education. A learner, you don't wait for the teacher to force you to do things. You are at the center of your own education, and you must be responsible if you want to pass. And as a teacher, how do you come in a learner-centered education? Your role is only to facilitate. We know soccer and the coach, ne? What is the role of the coach? You are only facilitating. It's the same way with education. As teachers nowadays, we are only facilitating. And then also we are saying this method, remember we are coming from traditional teaching where we were saying a teacher was at the center of the education, but now a learner is at the center. I remember when I was in school, like a teacher will write notes, explain notes. As a learner, you don't say anything in class. Your responsibility is just to listen to the teacher. Either you agree or disagree. You write notes, you write tests in the exam. That was tradition. But nowadays it's different. When you are teaching as a teacher, learners can agree and disagree with what you are teaching them. And then we move on to Engelbrecht model when it comes to curriculum design. Okay, so there are 12 steps when it comes to curriculum design. In number 1, you conduct a situation analysis. So when people are developing the curriculum that we are using in Namibia, so it was developed using the 12 step. In number 1, conduct a situation analysis. So this is when you read about the curriculum of different countries, and then you read about the curriculum of your country. Okay, you are looking at the resources, you are looking at the qualification, you are looking at all that. So that is now a situational analysis. Drafting a program development timetable and action. So here what you do is you look at the time frame. When do you want this curriculum to be implemented? Like I said, in Namibia, we are now on a new curriculum. When it was implemented, it started from pre-primary, and then it moved to primary, and then it moved to secondary. Now it's going to tertiary. And then managing the change to a new educational policy. So like here we are saying, for people to manage the change, you need to for people to develop a curriculum, you sit with stakeholders. Stakeholders, we are remember Abraham Iyambo, who was a minister of education. Before the curriculum change, there was a time he was going region to region, and then he was consulting with the parents, he was consulting with the teachers, he was consulting with the principal. If we have to change the education, what do we do? And then based on that analysis, they now chose the things to include in the curriculum according to the changes of the parents and the inspectors, all the stakeholders in education. And then finalizing the title, level, and duration and qualification. So we know now the qualification. Those days, BTD, Diploma in Education, was the minimum. But then now we know with the change of a new curriculum, so people are changing now qualification to degrees, to B.Ed honors. Now they are looking at with this type of curriculum. For the teacher, like I'm saying, we are now having grade 10 to 12. So these teachers must be able to teach at senior levels. So that is the type of qualification that you are talking about. At this level, you cannot just take any teacher, but there is a limit on the qualification. And then formulating the rationale, you come up with the goals of how you want your curriculum to be. Exist outcome you want by the end of the curriculum. If you read your curriculum, it's having by the end of the school, what skills are learners supposed to have? And then from there, they now come up with modules, they come up with subject, like I said, they come up with different subject syllabuses, and then they do the change which was implemented by other people. Okay, and then you look at admission requirement. Like, for example, for a learner to go to grade 10, what are the admission requirement in the past? It was F. But admission requirement at secondary school, a learner must have E symbols. Admission requirement at UNAM has been 25, but now with the new curriculum, they want 27 points. These are the requirements that we are talking about. The delivery mode, now you are going to select how do you want different teachers to teach. What teaching methods do you want people to use? Assessment, you look at the formal assessment. When the curriculum changed, the assessment also changed. Okay? The assessment is now when you look at your continuous assessment, and these things are set by NEAD. And then obtaining program approval from key stakeholders. So when people develop this curriculum, there are now certain stakeholders, like I said, we are having NEAD and working hand in hand with the Ministry of Education. Now they went through this curriculum, which people wanted to be implemented, and then when they agree, they take out things that were not needed until they are having the final curriculum to be implemented, and that is now in Namibia while we are implementing that curriculum. So those are the steps on how to come up with a curriculum design. And then we look at the changes. Like I said in the past, our phase was grade 8 to 10 and then grade 11 to 12. But now with the new curriculum, the senior phase, we are talking of grade 8 to 9, and then now we are talking of grade 10 to 12. Okay? So what are the changes? Here I only have 3, but like I said, go and read further. So some of the changes that we are having here. So from grade 11, like we are saying, a learner can exit school at grade 11. Okay? So from grade 11, a learner can go to, they are now getting a national certificate in grade 11. If they don't want to continue with grade 12, they can now, maybe a learner is good with plumbing, they can now go to VTC, they can now go to NEMTE. But then now again we are saying, for the learners who are going to grade 12, they must have 3 Cs in 3 subjects, and they are only going to do those subjects. So we are saying if a learner wants to be a doctor, if a learner wants to be an engineer, they cannot just end in grade 11. They must go through grade 12, because when they go to tertiary, UNAM want to see now. Remember high level, nowadays grade 12, it's only a combination of high level. In grade 11, it's only ordinary. So that is some of the change we are talking about. And then admission to examination, I spoke about it on the national certificate and university level. And then the in-service training. Now remember when the curriculum changed, as teachers, we were trained by the NEAD people that implemented the curriculum so that they can train us about the new concept. Of course, the content, some of the content is the same, some of the content have changed. So there was now an in-service training to train people on how to go about the new syllabus. And then we are talking about life skill and ICT that must be taught. They remove most of the non-promotional subject, but life skills, it's a must where learners must learn about life skill issues, ICT is a must. So these are some of the changes. There are so many changes, so that's why I'm saying if you go to Unit 7, you'll be able to read more information on this. And then we move on to progressive education. Okay? Progressive, as the word is saying, it's progress. Okay? We want to move progressive. We are saying we want learners, by the end of the tertiary level, we want learners who are having employable skills. So that is what we mean by progressive education. Okay? So we want to make a school curricula were broadened to make education useful and more interesting to learners. Like I said, nowadays when we are talking of learner-centered education, education is now more interesting to a learner because as a learner, you can interact with your teacher. Okay, the purpose of the education is to prepare learners for their current as well as their future. So remember, as teachers, we are not only creating or developing learners to pass grade 9, we must equip them with skills to be capable citizenship, to be a democratic citizenship. And then the teaching methods must rely on Dewey. Remember when I started with the presentation, I spoke about John Dewey's methods. It's a scientific method. It's problem solving, it's inquiry. Those are the type of teaching methods that they want. And then we want to involve the interest of the learners in the curriculum. We want to involve the experience of the learner in the curriculum. We want to bring out ability of even if the learners who don't have the ability, at the end of the day, we want to bring out their best. And then different ways that curriculum content can be organized. Okay, curriculum content can be organized into themes and topics. Okay, if you look in your syllabus, it's having themes and topics. We are looking at the combination of subject. Like we are saying, we are talking of social field, commerce, natural science. We want the combination of different subjects. And then we want learners to be able to use problem solving. They must be able to do practical work. They must be able to be doing different experiments. So from my side, all I'm emphasizing is that you need to study your module as indicated. And what I have realized in the past, learners want to start during the time of the exam. The time is now for you to start reading 1 unit per day. Let's know the keywords. So I'm wishing you all the best in your academic journey. And I'm hoping everyone is going to pass curriculum study. That was all from me. Thank you so much.